Alright, how's everyone doing? It's been a while since we've done this. I think last time was with Roman. And we went over Fable and Feliz stuff. I think just Fable last time. But this time I really want to get into, you know, some simple stuff, some front-end stuff. Because recently I had been doing some streams. Well, a while ago I've been doing some streams on metaprogramming and code generation. And I think it's tiresome both for me and for the viewers, so I decided to go with something more, something easier, something a bit easier to digest. So what we're doing today is we're going to make a simple game. It's called FifteenPuzzle. I'm pretty sure I made something like this before with Fable, but I can't find the code. But basically something like this, maybe, to check if it actually works. Yeah, so this is the FifteenPuzzle, and you have to make sure that the squares are in their order. So 1 has to go there, 2 has to stay here, 3 stays here, 4, 5, 6, etc, etc. And once you click on any of these, they get replaced with the empty spots. If I click here, it just gets replaced. I don't think we're going to do anything as fancy as with the animations in here, but we could easily work around it. You see, this is one of my favorite games because it's one of the only puzzles I can actually do fast, so I think and by fast I mean pretty slow, but still. Let me see. So yeah, we gotta at least play the game once before we can actually start making it, right? Okay, yeah, I need to... I might have forgotten how I should play this game. Yeah, I need to rotate the last 3. Oh, there you go. It's in the right order, right? Oh, it doesn't tell me whether I finished it? I did finish it, that's it. It doesn't tell me that I won. But basically that's the idea. I'm gonna try to do that using Feliz. By the way, really cool project. This SQL Hydra. Yep, pretty much. It's pretty simple, right? Could be fun. I'm pretty sure I made it at somewhere. Maybe in Fable? Or Fable IO REPL 3? One of the games could be? Let's try it out. At least if Fable wants to load. Come on. Oh well. Alright. Let's just forget about it, because I even forgot how to make it, so that would be a nice challenge for me to fix the stuff. I think it's pretty simple. Just need to make sure everything is in the right place and stuff. Alright. So we're going to use Feliz to build this thing, where Feliz is like a front-end library that builds on top of React, and we're going to use that to build our application components. If this is the first time you're in and you never heard about Feliz, but for example you've heard about SafeStack in F#, SafeStack is like the full stack, backend and frontend, and Feliz is just the frontend. So we won't be building a backend application, it will be just the pure frontend with Feliz, which is something that you, for example, could publish on the GitHub pages. So what I want to do is show you how to get started with it. It should be pretty easy. because this is the documentation, by the way. You should definitely check it out if you're learning Fable, Feliz, and React. And if you're learning about React, you should definitely check these sections out. There's also a bunch of components you could use that work really nicely with Feliz. But that's not for today. Today we're just going to do bare bones and go to the project template, which is a .NET template that sets up a Feliz project and a test project. I'm not sure if we're going to do unit testing today, but this is like the easiest way to get started with Feliz. Alright. I think I do have Feliz, but if I do this again, it gets updated. So here I'm basically installing the template and updating if it already exists. Alright, so now I can say .NET new Feliz. It doesn't have any options. So just .NET new Feliz, and then you can create the library. So let's say make their 15Puzzle with Feliz. CD to this thing. .NET new. Alright, so far so good. Hi there, Dimitri. Yeah, I'm happy I'm back too. It's been a while. It's hard to find time to do these things, but I thought if I can just make really short ones, well, not really short, maybe like 1 hour streams, and I don't do anything too crazy. I'm just gonna, like, you know, just chill out, hang out with you, see what's going on, and then maybe I could do these more often. So that's quite nice. I hope you like them. All right, there we go. We have a Feliz template created. Let me try to see if I can open it right here. You see, this is the thing. I press F to search for my project, but everything starts with an F here, so it's pretty pointless. There you go. So you could either use Visual Studio to work with the template, but you could also use VS Code, which is what I'm going to use today. I'll just walk you through the template. It's a bit big for a getting started project, but I think you kind of forget about the stuff in here once you start coding. Let me just put this here because it's a bit too much. All right, where am I? Yeah. So these templates, it has 2 projects, one inside of the source, and it seems that I also am publishing the JavaScript artifacts. I don't want the JavaScript artifacts. We should ignore those. Maybe they're already ignored. They should be already ignored. Yeah, they're ignored. That's nice. Okay, so in the source project, we have our app, which is very generic. Just keep it simple, one project. It has a couple of files. So if we look at it, it has a couple of files, extensions, which is where I put random stuff that I use in components. And components is where I build my components. And main is where I initialize the application. So main is like the entry point. You know how this works. And along with it, we have also the tests project, which is for testing. Duh. And tests use Fable Mocha, which implements an API that looks like Expecto. So I hope this is something familiar if you have done F# before. And we actually run these tests in the browser. So that's quite nice. All right, it seems that Ionide already figured out what the type should be. That's really cool. And let's look at, you know what? Let's run this thing before looking at any other code. So first things first is npm install. Npm install will install the JavaScript dependencies that I have in here. So things like React DOM, but I also am using date functions by default, adding Bulma, but I'm not using it unless you actually want to use it. So these are my dependencies for the templates. And next I want to do .NET npm start, which basically starts Fable in watch mode against the source directory and runs Webpack dev server along the way. All right, it seems the connection is good. That's nice. Recently, I've been hearing a lot of people saying they're using SafeStack, but just the front end parts. And I'm thinking, okay, if you're just using the front end, you might not actually need the entire SafeStack, you know. But of course, you have things that come with it, like the build project, the automated tests. It's quite nice. I'm thinking if you just need a front end without a back end, then you could just use this one. But again, this is like just Feliz focused. Maybe you should, if you don't like Feliz, maybe you shouldn't do that. Alright, so npm install finished, and I can just go npm start. And then we should see, okay, so this is Fable running against the source, trying to compile. I don't think I have latest. Yeah, that's not latest. Was it 15 that was latest? Not sure. But it should be recent enough, because we're using Fable 3, which is quite cool. Alright, so this will compile and start the project in localhost. Oh man. Let's see, because I'm not sure what I should disable right now, to be honest. Okay, maybe I should exit this one. Quit this one. I hope it's back. It says here it's unstable for some reason. Variable frame rate, how can I set that? I'm not sure if I can change the settings midstream. Okay. Yeah, to be honest, I'm not an expert on this thing. Yeah, sorry about that. I'll try to see how I can make it better the next time. But for now, because I'm using my phone as for the network, it usually works just fine. I'm not sure why this is happening. Oh my god, npm is just done right now. Is the sound good at least? Yeah, it's not ideal really to do it, to watch it like this, but let's hope it's still fine. All right, so Dimitri is asking, is it possible to switch off the JavaScript generation? No, it's not, because that's where the that's where all the JavaScript. So every F# module becomes a JavaScript module, and then Webpack takes over from there, from your entry module. So you can switch it off, but then you won't be generating any JavaScript code. Is this what you mean? Or you just want to change the extension? I think having them as sibling to their modules at first was a bit weird, but I think it makes sense because even modules here can use relative paths when importing JavaScript files. So it makes sense that, for example, if you use extensions in here, that it will import this file. I guess you could put it all in one output file. I'm not sure, but it's usually not a problem that they are here. If I do git init, they will be grayed out and you won't see them in here. Let me actually do that. So I do git init. Yeah, so they get grayed out and you only see the files you actually care about. So that's quite nice. But I don't think you could actually remove them somewhere else. It's only during the build and pull of dependencies. Oh yeah, true. Maybe it was, yeah, maybe that was it. Okay, I'm gonna make sure next time I already have them installed so that we don't run into those things. Yeah, because that makes sense. npm will just download the entire universe in here. All right. Okay, so that's good to hear. So I know I won't be running into trouble anytime soon. Okay, that's good. You can make Fable put the JavaScript into a separate directory? Can you? That'd be cool. I haven't looked into the recent options, to be honest. I mean, there are a couple of options, but there are a couple of ones that are not even documented, so I'm not sure. But that's good to know. You could put them in different directory. I think I like them. I like them like this. Anyway, I talked about a lot. Let's look at what this thing generated. Localhost. Yeah, there you go. Hello world. Super simple stuff. So that's not what we want to see. Let's look at where this comes from. So main is the entry point, and in main, we're opening up a bunch of namespaces, importing a global SAS file. We'll just forget about that for a second. There you go. And yeah, we won't need this thing either. And we're calling React DOM.render, which takes a component as input, and it wants to know where that component should be mounted. So here we're saying, look at the element that has this ID. In our index.html, that would be this div, and mount the component onto that div. Okay? So main is taking the hello world components. Let's look at hello world. And there you go. So the template includes a couple of components just to showcase React components and showcase a couple of examples. I have really simple ones. It starts off with the simplest possible React component. A React component is like a UI piece, a piece of UI that you could put in multiple places. A component maintains its own state, which means that if you're using some internal state in that component, it's not shared with other components. So basically you can think of them like well, it depends on what type of React component you're using, but basically here they're defined as functions, but you can think of them as functions that have some internal state. if that makes any sense. I know the React model is a bit confusing sometimes, especially for beginners, even non-beginners. But I guess it makes sense when you start getting the hang of it and you think, okay, that's easy, that's workable. I could build cool stuff with it. Okay, so the first React component is a function. It must be a camel case, which is important, and it returns a React element. And to create a React element, you look at the HTML module and you create stuff. So we could also do HTML div, and we go HTML h1, hello from Feliz, HTML paragraph. I hope we can make this thing work. Isn't that the motto of all our front-end developers? Hey, there you go. So here I've created a div and it has one h1 element and it has a paragraph. So this is basically my component. It's a piece of UI that for now is basically my entire application because that's my entry component. But there's nothing stops me from building bigger components that use this smaller component. So I could say static member. What do you call it? Compound component, or just more elements. Let's make things simple. So more elements will be an HTML div that contains hello world twice. So components, hello world, components, hello world. Just want to drive the idea home that this piece of code is reusable. And you would say, well, that's like obvious because it's a function. Well, it's not so obvious when you start making internal state, and that's where things get interesting. All right, it seems like it's looking for something. Maybe it's looking for the icon. It shouldn't look for the icon because I don't have a backend running at localhost 5000. But anyways, so I made a new component which uses the other components, and by using, I just mean calling the function, which is a really important concept because composition, when it comes to React and Feliz, will be a matter of function calls. So when we say more elements uses hello world, we are just meaning it uses that function. So I could now change my main component to use more elements. And Ionide should, well, it compiled successfully, but Ionide isn't happy for some reason. Okay, what did I mess up? Elements. There you go. Why is this like this? Yeah, you get the idea. I just reused that piece of code, piece of UI twice. You get the idea. Ah, with the outdoor option. Cool. This looks like a nice tutorial on how to set up OBS for slow moving streams. I'll definitely check it out. Thanks. I don't get why. Please, Ionide, what's going on? Oh, thank you. Sanity restored. Okay. So, components. So components use this attribute called React component, which in Fable 3 is required. Because of what I just explained with how the components are consumed. Even though we are calling the functions here, they're not they won't be translated to function calls, they will be translated to React specific calls, things that React expects. And one of the things that React expects and the tooling around it is that these components are capitalized. So this is important because if the tools around React know that this is a component, then things like hot module reloading will work. So if I say, okay, let me just put this into here. That's much better. And the code here. Yeah. I don't need this one. Yeah, thank you. Got it. Yeah. So basically, if React can figure out, and the React tooling, namely React refresh, can figure out that I'm using components and reusing them all over the place, it could figure out that I don't need to, I can maintain the state without resetting it. So let's say style color red. So you notice that, I'm not sure how fast the stream was, but the application didn't fully refresh the page. So only the components that were affected, well, the components that are in this scope that are affected are re-rendered based on the new UI code without refreshing the entire page. Of course, you could refresh as well and it will become just as fast, except that if you have state, for example, a logged in user, and you change your UI, you don't want the page to refresh and you having to log in again and go to that part of the UI where you have to make changes. So React tools can be a bit picky, so that's why it expects them to be capitalized. And there are a couple of more requirements. I haven't documented these requirements, unfortunately, but I can talk about them right now. Basically, there are a couple of them. First of all, the entry point file should not contain component definitions, right? So in my entry here, I'm not defining any new components. I'm just using the one I want to render as my root component. So this is the first one. The second one is that when you define components in a file like this, there can be only components in that file. So if only public components in that file. So if you define helper functions, these helper functions should be private, which is something that can be overlooked when you're building a nice small component and you put the helper functions on top somewhere here. It can be overlooked, but to make sure that the hot module reloading works properly, you can put the helper functions in another file and use them from here. It can be a little bit cumbersome, but I think it's doable if you just keep it in mind. The last requirement, of course, is that they are capitalized, and if you're using Feliz or other, actually this attribute works with non-Feliz React. So if you use Fable React, the old DSL, well, it's not old, it's still being used, but if you use that, you could still use React component with it, because React component comes from a package that is used by Feliz. It is made for Feliz, but it can be used outside of Feliz. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so we get the idea. Piece of UI can be reused. Let's look at some state. And this is where things get interesting. So let me look at the counter. It's another counter application. And it gets fully re-rendered because I changed the entry point. That's why you don't want function definitions, component definitions in here, because they will get re-rendered. All right. Anyone? Any question? I put everything in modules, lowercase functions, no attributes. Always wonder it's not working for me. Yeah, it's a bit different because in Fable 3 we worked really hard. Well, I'm patting myself on the back a little bit, but I actually was talking with the maintainers of React Refresh and asking them to fix a couple of problems we encountered when we're implementing these things. Basically, if you look at the generated code, you will see what React tries to do. So React tries to find components that are starting with a capital letter and they're exported. So it will look for functions that are exported as capital letters. If you do a small letter, a camel case function, then it won't work. But this is only if you're relying on React Refresh. If you have an LMesh application, that's a different story because LMesh, the HMR, the hot module reloading in LMesh works differently because it maintains one global tree structure of the state of the entire application. So it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter that how your components are built. It's less strict in that sense, but again, it forces you to use LMesh across the application, which is not what Feliz is aiming for. Feliz aims to use simple components, follow React patterns, and every now and then, if you're required, or if you're like having a big LMesh application, you want to make it smaller, make it easier to compose the smaller parts, make a React component that uses LMesh in it. I could talk later about that, but basically, if you go to Feliz, there's something called React LMesh components. If it loads, hope it loads. There you go. So Feliz use LMesh is a library that allows you to build React components just like these ones, where the implementation, the internal state of that component is using an LMesh dispatch loop. So the patterns you're used to when building LMesh applications, so you have your message, your state, your init and update, and then your actual component can be implemented using this thing called React use LMesh, where you give it your init function, your update function, and it gives you a state and dispatch, which you can use to, well, you can use the state to render it and use dispatch to dispatch messages like those. And then once you have that component, you could use it like any other component. So reusability becomes somewhat easier, because if you've worked with a large LMesh application, you will know how tedious it can be to put the pieces together, to do the wiring, a lot of boilerplate in there. But again, it's like always trade-offs. I think using this library, Feliz use LMesh, it's like the best of both worlds, where you're implementing a small component but using the pattern that is really nice. I think the LMesh pattern is great. It's just that when you have a bunch of components and you have to explicitly pass the state down and then pass the events up, it becomes quite tedious. So that's why smaller React components, I think, are the way to go forward, at least. It's not to say that LMesh is deprecated or anything. At least I don't want it to. I mean, that would make my book deprecated. I don't want that. So let's see how it goes. For now, you can use both in the same application and things should work out, unless you need some React specific stuff, in which case you should just use React patterns. So I think you could mix and match really well. You just have to think about things like how to get the HMR to work properly and things like that. And for example, if you have an LMesh application which re-renders on each message, how that works when you use React references, which basically break out of the virtual DOM. Okay, I was planning on making this very simple, very beginner friendly, and I'm already diverging into a lot more stuff. So let's look at the state. Let's look at a stateful component. A stateful component is just like another function, except that it maintains state across re-renders. So let's put counter here, and if you can see, I'm using something called React use state, which is a variable which is a state variable that I want to keep track of. In this case, it's the how many times the increment button has been clicked, and every time it is clicked, I set the count to the old count plus 1. So that's how we can maintain the counter. So this is actually where HMR or hot module reloading comes into play, because I have state. I've been playing with the application, clicking around, and I want to change the UI without resetting the state. So if I go prop text count and then prop style, this is the part where I want the state to be maintained and the UI changes. So this part was re-rendered. This part has been called again, except that this part was maintained, which is great. And this really helps with bigger applications. So making sure HMR works really helps you out. Okay, so I've made a counter. I think we will be using a similar structure. And yeah, there's also a router included in this template. You might think, oh, routing, that sounds a bit complicated, but it actually isn't. As you can see, it's a very small component. It starts off by using the current URL that the component lands on, and gives you a state variable, just like count, except that it changes when the URL changes. And based on the current URL, which is a list of string segments, we will decide which component we want to render. So that's pretty easy. Let's look at it. Let's look at router. All right, so when I have no string segments in the routing, let's look at it. If I have no string segments, I get this quote unquote component. It's here just a static element, but it could be a component. Same way, if I do hello, it goes to the hello component. And if I go to counter, it goes to the counter component, just as if you would expect. And again, even I've used counter inside of the router. If I change stuff from counter, the state is maintained, which is really important. All right, so far so good. If anyone has questions, let me see where I was. No, here. You see, issues actually a different one, since I'm in fact using LMS. Yeah, and in LMS can be. I think the default model for LMS is great, except that it sometimes can conflict with how React works, because React sometimes uses references which are not supposed to be re-rendered on each thing that happens. In Elmish, anything happens and then the entire thing gets re-rendered. In React, you don't want that. Basically, if a component re-renders, only that part of the app gets re-rendered. So that's why it can conflict with Elmish. The way I see it is default Elmish, like full-fledged Elmish, is using React inside of it. But when you're using Feliz and you use Elmish components, you're basically using only parts of the application that use that pattern instead of the entire thing, which I think, again, is the best of both worlds. Would you recommend to go with Fable 3 in production? Absolutely. It's like, I think it's one of the most stable Fable versions I've ever seen. Everything just works. It's been a long time since I've encountered any compiler bug, so to speak. Everything is just there. It's really very, very reliable. What extensions are you using that colors the indentation? I think it's called a rainbow indentation. Let me check that for you. Something with rainbow, I'm pretty sure. Oh. indent rainbow. Yeah, this is the one. Very nice, especially with UI code, because you definitely want to see what's going on in here. So you want to see in which level you are. Sometimes it conflicts with how many spaces you're using, but I guess this is fine too. All right. So we've talked about stateful components, a little bit of routing, which I think is really, I've seen many routing solutions, and I think this is the easiest it can get. If you can make it any easier, I'm all ears. What else? Yeah, I know, right? Fable 3 is just great. When it changed from Fable 2, I was a bit skeptical because, oh no, we have to change the templates, change everything, and no, it's really just the bundling that was changed, and it was a lot faster, a lot of bugs fixed, and we get also compiler extensions like this one. This is a compiler extension, a Fable compiler extension, which was previously not possible. So allowing for this type of functionality was great. Really happy with it, and I would definitely recommend you use this thing. It does a lot. It does a lot to the component. It transforms the input properties to React props, and I should probably do an entire video on just how this works, because it has a lot of options, really. A lot of options for making interop easier, which are nowhere to be documented, actually. I think I've documented one at some point, somewhere. Stateless components. For some reason it's taking too long. Maybe I shouldn't do this. Yeah, by the way, I'm using components as static functions and not as module functions. You've probably noticed that, because this is not something you usually see in a F# application. You know, usually it's just like a components module and a bunch of functions in here. But I've opted for a static class because you could have these type named variables. So when you define the component, you could have named and optional variables. And when you call the component, you get to use these names. I would always use these names because it makes it a lot easier to see what is what. And if you use optional parameters here, it gets also easier, because if you have optional parameters here and you don't provide them, then they become none by default. And React component knows how to work with that. So it's really useful. And I think it's a lot more readable than having greeting and then just Jane and 20. What's 20? I think for readability, this makes it a lot nicer than, say, this thing. So yeah, you could do it like this. You could do it in modules. Make sure it's still capitalized and it has a React component. But I think components as static functions. You also get to have overloads, which are, I think, underused in F#. But yeah, you can do both. So yeah, that's great. Let's back to our main application. And we wanted to. Yeah, I need to make an entire stream on how React component works, because it makes interop easier. For now, the main functionality of it is just to implement a function. But you could easily make an external component. I will just show you real quick, and maybe it's something you could experiment with later on. So you could have, let's say, external is React imported. So you could have an external something that takes, I don't know, title, which is a string, and it takes, I don't know, hidden. Boom. All right. So imagine you have this JavaScript, right? Let me import cool part or whatever, I don't know, from external module. I don't know, I need to make an actual example where this is used. But basically, if you have this JavaScript, cool part title is hello and hidden. Hidden is, say, true. Is it like this? Is JSX like that? Okay. Basically, you could map this function. Let me just call it like this: cool part, and you say import cool part from external module, and this will take care of everything. It will take care of the import statement. It will take care of transforming these properties into React component properties. This is like really useful. It also works if you have a JSX component inside of your application. So I'm not sure if I have it in here, but if you have a component defined in here in JSX and you want to import it in your Fable app easily, you could just say, well, import cool part. I'm starting to cringe about the name. If you have cool part defined in coolpart.jsx, where coolpart.jsx is a React component, where coolpart is an exported React component inside of this relative file, then this should also work. So this plugin, this attribute made it really easy to build these things. For now, it doesn't work with default imports, default exports. So you can say import default from. You can't say that just yet. This is something I want to implement sometime soon when time permits. But you get the idea. It's really useful, and you'll be surprised how easy it is. Anyways, React bindings, not for today. Let's go back to the 15Puzzle. Let's make it one. Let's make one here. So static member 15Puzzle. Okay. Same old. React component. HTML div. HTML. Let's make some style. Style text align center. Children HTML1. 15Puzzle. All right, we get a centered div finally. Save. Go to main. So nope. Let's show the 15Puzzle mod function. All right, there you go. That's the header. What we want is like a flag, a toggle, whether we are playing or not, right? Yes, you can use records for React components. You could use that, but records have another problem, is that they also have to be defined in a separate module. So if you want to use a component and you define the input props as a record, then you have to put the record in another component because of how the JavaScript looks like for that record, and that record exposes a inherited class from record in JavaScript, and React tooling doesn't like that. I think I even output a warning if you use a record using this. It should work. It should work just fine. I think I've also documented it in here. Let's see, stateful components. Yeah, this is how to work with lazy, this is how to work with use reducer. Pretty sure I documented it here somewhere. Aliasing prop, nope. Components with effects, nope. Okay, I don't see it in here, but you could definitely use records or anonymous records. Anonymous records don't need to be defined in a different file if you're defining them as a type separately, right? But records definitely work. All right, what else? Yeah, these things are really good. Yeah, no more key value list thingies, no more units, because I already like I got rid of those with Feliz. You don't have to use key value list anymore when you're making Fable Feliz bindings. But still, this React component makes it really nice. Is that something that simplified drastically binding to existing? Yes, it makes it really easy compared to previously, where you had to define a bunch of stuff separately, and then the conversion won't be straightforward. It's still not, but I think this is like a nice sweet spot for now. I'm definitely gonna improve that a lot more. In the original Fable React, if you do it idiomatically, you had basically put all the options in the union type and map them into parameters for the imported function. Exactly. I don't understand why was that like a, well, in hindsight, you might think it was bad, but we were able to make a bunch of components using that pattern, except that the problems start to arise, and this is like the first time I realized, no, we shouldn't use unions anymore, is when you have overloads. So a lot of React elements and React components have different types of input for the same thing. So basically, if you had an overload, you had to make your union data basically object, and that object had to be defined somewhere else. It was either unsafe or just not very nice to work with, which I found really annoying until I made a binding. Where is it? Fable React flat picker, maybe. There you go. So I made this. I made this a long time ago. Yeah, and almost 2 years now. And this is where I started to see there's a different way to do these things. Because basically you could define an option or a prop as a dummy interface, right? You could define as a dummy interface and then use key value pairs that you define yourself. Use key value pairs that you define here. There's an isConfig thingy, which is like a nested type. You could just forget about that in this case, in what I'm trying to explain. So basically key value pairs, which are private, and then you would have functions that make these options separately, which allow you to transform the input into something else before converting it. Let me see where I have something like that. So here, for example, all these options have different keys, and they take the value and they transform it into this dummy interface. The nice thing about this is that you could always transform the value before making an option out of it. Let me see. Yeah, this is an example of transforming the value. So I get a callback in here, which is a datetime to unit, but then I make another callback, which is used in the, I make another safe callback, which is used in the binding itself. So in the binding, it does the JavaScript shenanigans by checking nullability, whether something is null or things are empty. If the dates are empty, then do nothing, but otherwise do use the callback that the F# user provided. And this is how you make different options. And yeah, again, doing things like taking a datetime list, which aren't compatible in JavaScript, but you make them compatible by wrapping them into something that is compatible, and doing so underneath in the binding. So yeah, bindings, many ways to do these things, and really interesting subject. Yeah, this is pretty old. I'm not even sure if this is optimal when it comes to bundle size, but I need to look at it at some point. But yeah, you get the idea. So here I'm using just normal module functions, but once I needed to overload things, yeah, I used the static classes, and then I ended up writing Feliz with HTML and prop and style. Yeah, I guess this is like the thing from Fable React. It's sometimes nicer than Feliz, I have to admit, but I'm not sure how you can work with the fact that you always have to think about how you define things in a single line or multiple lines, and when you need to use like when you have to do this basically. So you have div, and then you do stuff in here, then you do another div in here. I just can't. If I need to, if things get complicated with Feliz in here, I will just make helper functions instead, or helper components. It's up to you really. They're both interchangeable, like interoperable, to be precise. So you could switch out things here and there. If you want to use React components, you could just install. You don't have to install Feliz. You install Feliz.compiler plugins, and that's the package you need to get this plugin. Where is it? Yeah. So if you install Feliz.compiler plugins, you open up Feliz as a namespace. You won't get anything like HTML or prop modules from here. You only get the React component. There's another hook you get, but it's not important in this case. You get the hook plugin. It's this one, but this is mainly used internally in Fable. So that's another cool thing about these compile plugins. I can make things that make the library better from within without like documenting it and whatever. Okay. Did I want to make the application or not? I'm not sure anymore. Okay, HTML, HR. Let's see. So we need to toggle to know whether we have started the game or not, right? So let's game started and set game started equals React use states. It starts at false. So if not game started, then I want to show a button that says start game. And how do I do that? I don't want to indent any. Okay, whatever. HTML button. Start game. Else, this is where game is being rendered, right? HTML 3 game here. Okay, so start game, and once that is clicked, I toggle this one to true. Right, so once you click this button, you go into. Can I remove the indentation? I'm not sure. No. Maybe if I do this, and then I could do this. Not happy. Why isn't happy? Nope. F# won't settle for an indentation pattern. Okay. Yeah, you could still do the children to elements. You could still do that with Feliz. I mean, you want to. Let's see. Where is my app? Oh, there you go. Let me put back the code on. So if not started, then do this. Otherwise, run the game. Start game, and then we get game here. I'm not a big fan of this HR. It looks very ugly. All right. So what's the game? The game has a bunch of pieces. So the 15Puzzle has a 4x4, is a 4x4 grid basically, where the start positions are randomized, and then one of these cells is the empty cell or the empty slot. So let's define a new module to put the state stuff in there. 15Puzzle fs. Let's add it in here. Add it just before components. Compile include 15Puzzle fs. Okay. That will be a module because I don't care about HMR in this one. 15Puzzle. Okay. Let's see if Fable gets happy, because sometimes it doesn't know how to restart when a new file gets added. So let's see how that goes. Oh, it did compile, right? Oh, there you go. Yeah, it works. Okay, so let's start by saying a cell. A cell is either the empty slot, which also has a position, right? Of int by int, or a number. Of int by int. Well, which number it is, does that matter? Does it matter which number it is? You know what? I'm just gonna look over how I did it before. How about that? I already give up. Simple elements. Fabulous simple elements. Anyone using Fabulous here? For mobile dev? I made a library a long time ago. Well, I still maintain this thing. I don't use it anymore. Where I made a 15Puzzle here. What are we doing here? We have a bunch of slots and we're rendering the free position. Okay. Yeah. All right, let's look at it. Let's look at the types at least. So, no, not the source. I need to translate it to release. Okay. Well, that's one way to do it. All right, let me take this part. Okay. Oh, I lost all my formatting. Let's see. Okay, this looks good too. There you go. I have application state, which is a bunch of those things, and a free position. Initial states. So you start from an initial state, and then things happen. Let's just use this thing. Okay. Save components. Let's app states, and then set app states is React, and then I'm gonna use state. There are two kinds of use states. So this part's the use state with updater is slightly different. It's actually the same function, but the difference with this one is that if I use state with updater in here, instead of taking the value directly, it takes the previous value to compute the next value from it. So this is what updater means, because it basically asks you to give it an updater that uses the previous state rather than relying on the previous state coming from here. And those two things are not 100% the same, because this can be captured in a closure used inside of this function, but this cannot, at least unless you're defining a function inside of this updater. So basically this is a lot safer when you're dealing with non-primitive values. So if I have a primitive value, then use state is fine. But if I have a non-primitive value, then I probably should use state with updater. So this becomes 15Puzzle and then initial states. Okay, that is just false. So that's my app state, and I can do stuff with it. App state has a slot, so this means I could start rendering those things, and I need a bunch of boxes, right? Let me see. So this is the game for slot in app states. Slots do HTML div, and I already don't like the nesting in here, but that's for another time. Prop style. Prop text will be slot dot. Well, isn't slot like a position and a tag? Yeah, so the tag is this. The style will be, let's see, style width is, say, 40 by 40. And if position equals app state, the free position, then we also add a new style, which is style background color red. Should be the other way around. Let's see, style background color light green. But if it's the free position, then it's light gray, something like that. Let's see how this works. Okay, now what? Rendered more hooks than during. What is this? Is it not understanding those things? Okay. Should say true. Okay, well, yeah, that's kind of what I wanted, but that's not the correct styling for it. Alright. I think HTML div, I need a container. I need a container for those. Where this container has the proper styling, so I need to make it something like a flex box. Sure. Yeah, I haven't done anything actually here. So prop style. I think I'm gonna rewrite the style into just CSS. Style display flex style flex wrap is wrap. And then prop children. Another one. Okay. Something like this, but this is not entirely what I want, because I want maximum of 4 per row, which maybe we can later. 16. Actually, the text is only if the position is the free. If not anything but the free position, and then empty string, otherwise this thing. Because we don't want to see 16 in there. Oh, it's the other way around. It's the free position. Show nothing. Otherwise, yep. Something like this. Margin 5. I want to say we're getting somewhere, but I'm not sure. Alright, let's see what you guys are up to. Hello, what extension? Yeah. Exact variable for button? Extract variable for button? Yeah, I could. I could extract that, but I'm just like prototyping what I want eventually before I make things cleaner, right? I could definitely extract this one out. Make a nice div out of this instead of having to do this nesting part in here. And yeah, I could probably do that in here as well. But for now, I'm just gonna look into the flex box. So basically, next time I want to update the app state, I should, like every time I need to call this thing. So set app state, get previous state, and then which is an app state, and then I need to make a new one out of it. So this would be really nice to compute the next state without using messages or commands or anything, which is kind of nice. But now I'm really interested into how I can make 4 maximum. Can we say we want the width to be 45%? Well, without the margins then. Yeah, something like this. So now, no matter how, yeah. Basically like this. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Let's make the padding in here style. Padding 20. Okay. Make this a little bit less. And then give it a margin. Need a little bit of dividers in here. Yeah, something like this. Actually, somewhat more. Nope, too much. 22. Not too shabby, hey? Alright, so now I need to do something about clicking those things. Before that, let's make the text a little bit. Okay, padding top. Let's put the text a little bit in the middle. The padding top, give it a 10, and style text align. Text align is already centered, right? Border radius 15. Maybe 15 is a bit too much. Well, style cursor pointer. Yeah, that's much better. So now every time I click on 8, 8 should swap with the free position. That's not hard, right? Because app state maintains the free position separately. So basically I need a given an app state. Let select slot, so to speak, or slot selected. Current app state, current state, well, just state. Which position was selected, so position. And I need to create a new one, so well, that becomes state with free position is this one. Is that what's gonna happen? It sounds too easy. So I have the prop, so let's see on click. Basically, set app state 15Puzzle. Slot selected. Actually, it's fun of the previous state, right? So that would be previous states, and which position was selected would be this one. Okay, refresh, start. Okay, they still need to swap out the tags. All right, and actually you shouldn't be able to click anything that is not next to it. Okay, so there are more things to consider, but hey, we're getting somewhere, and it's nice that we can just do this without going without just using functions. Okay, so another thing I wanted to show you, which is you should definitely look at, is the tooling from React. So if you look at it, opens up, yeah, there you go, components. It shows you the state, so which hooks are used. So we're using a state variable. I think this is the one for the boolean, the game started one. I'm not sure how you can name them though. And the other one is the free position, and you could see how things look like. Of course, because this is F#, you will see the JavaScript representation, and not, for example, a list. So a list of F# list of undefined, which is the generic type. It's not used because I'm not using generics for reflection, so it doesn't get propagated. But basically a list of lists, a list of arrays where each array is like the tuple. First element is the position, second element is the tag name. All right. Let's try to fix this for real quick. So once you, yeah, so slot selected, free position is this one, and the slots will be state slots. Let's see, slots that map each one, position and tag, if position slot position, just don't shadow things. If slot position equals position, we have to look for the free position and swap it out with the tag. So we need to find the selected tag and swap it out so that this stays 16, so to speak. All right. Let's see, let's selected tag. Well, I could actually just send the tag as well, like which tag was selected, right? Tag string. Okay, so if slot tag. This becomes, so I'm looping through it. If slot position equals that position, yeah, let's see, if you click on the same thing, it doesn't change. So first of all, if position equals state free position, then do nothing. Then state dot slots, because we don't want to change those. Otherwise, else then we want to do something with this, with the slots. where we know the selected tag is not the same. If the slot position is this position, no, what I'm trying to do is once you swap with the free slots, then the tags should swap too. So if I just clicked on the free slot, nothing happened. But if I clicked on a non-free tag, which is this one, I clicked on it, then that becomes 16, otherwise tag. Does that make sense? Oh yeah, slot position. Okay. Yeah, I need to change that in here too. So previous state, position, and tag. Okay. Our game. Oh yeah, that's not what I wanted. That's what I wanted. Well, that's not it either. Okay, I need to think about how this worked again. I forgot about it. But in any case, did the list by 4? Yeah, I should probably do that. I will have to check it out. But yeah, I think I've got into like half of the thing. It looks nice, so I need to look into the logic again and maybe write some unit tests next time. I think I'm gonna wrap it up for today as well. Thanks a lot for watching. Let me know what you thought of this and what you want to see next time, because I definitely want to do this more often, but like I said, I wanted to make them shorter so that I'm able to do them more often, you know? So and explain things that I usually can't find time to document properly and things